Hello everyone, it's me again, in part 2 of my Godzilla movie collection. Now, continuing where we left off, I was talking about the Godzilla films from 1954 to 1968, and now I'm here talking about the rest of the Godzilla film series. So, here we go. And now, here's one of the which a lot of Godzilla fans say is the worst Godzilla movie ever. So, Godzilla, All Monsters Attack, or as it goes by the title, American title, Godzilla's Revenge. And I never really quite understood why it went by the name of Godzilla's Revenge. I mean, revenge on who? But in 1954, it was clear that Godzilla was mad at mankind because of their misuse of atomic weapons, not treating the Earth, and, scarring Godzilla with the atomic bomb, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to this movie, I was like, Godzilla's Revenge on who? I don't know. So, this film is technically regarded as the worst of the Japanese Godzilla movies because, I think because it was stock footage. There is no actual, there is a handful of special effects in the series, and but because Eiji Tsuburaya was actually bedridden at the time that this film was in production, Ishiro Honda, the director, took over the special effects scenes, which resulted in a lot of stock footage from the previous Godzilla films, like Godzilla vs. Ebirah, the Sea Monster, Godzilla, Son of Godzilla, and some of the other of Toho's films of that era. And it's also a bit of an interesting side story. A young kid who is left to fend for himself because his parents are busy with work and stuff. They're and he has to look after himself. He's being bullied by an older kid, and he escapes from reality when he puts some headphones on, falls asleep, and he dreams that he is on Monster Island with Godzilla and his son Minula. Now, in this movie, Minula actually talks, and in the Japanese version, it sounds, I think it's voiced by a female, and something like that. But in the awfully unwatchable English dubbed version, Minula sounds like one of the Disney characters, Goofy. I was like, oh God, oh. I personally, I only watched the Japanese version of this film. I've only watched the English dubbed version, I don't know, just maybe once, because it's just, if you watch the dubbed version in English, it just feels painful to watch. And the kid's so annoying. In the Japanese version, it's not as bad and a bit more tolerable, and yeah, this was clearly aimed for kids. But you have to understand, Ishiro Honda had a soft spot for kids, so he intended this to be made for children, not like adults. As a kid, I enjoyed, Godzilla or Monsters Attack as a kid, but looking back on it now, it's just, I just felt like it's kind of like one of those, when they used the stock footage, it was like one of those best of compilations, they use, where they've got footage from other films, like you would see in, in some of those VHS movies or whatever, Anyway, that's what it felt like. If you left out Godzilla and had the story of a young kid, trying to deal with, being on his own with his parents out working overtime, and stuff like that, it's actually a pretty good movie. But as a Godzilla movie, maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe it's best just to stay away from this. If you want to watch this, if you're have kids and they want to check this out, by all means. But if you're a diehard serious Godzilla fan, I don't recommend Godzilla All Monsters Attack. Maybe it is the worst Godzilla movie ever. And now we come to the 1970s, and to start off, we have Godzilla versus Hedorah, or Godzilla versus Hedorah. I never could figure out how to pronounce it. I would just say Godzilla versus Hedorah, which is from 1971. And this time, our prehistoric hero goes up against a monster made from the smog monster, made from pollution and the sludge that's being dumped into the oceans. And now Godzilla has to save the earth from this mastodon of pollution and the destruction of pollution and stuff like that. It has a very strong environmental message, because at that time Japan was, a lot of the cities were filled with pollution and stuff like that, because of all the factories and stuff, and Godzilla versus Hedorah was like a message, against the dangers of polluting the environment, and stuff like that, or if you dump sludge and toxic waste into the oceans, that sort of thing. And Hedorah is a symbol of what happens when you damage the environment, and Godzilla steps in as the environmentalist to save the day and to show mankind to take care of the earth and save the earth and stuff like that. Not just Godzilla's responsibility, it's a responsibility every one of us shares. And I think Godzilla vs. Hedorah retains that strong environmental message even 50 or so years after its release. And again, Hedorah always creeped me out as a kid. He just looked like, the way he looks like a monster made out of sludge, it was like, ugh. And the stuff and the horrible things Hedorah does to his victims, it was a bit scary as a kid, really. And whenever Godzilla came to save the day, I was rooting for Godzilla to beat the living crap out of the smog monster. So yeah, and another entertaining Godzilla movie with a very strong environmental message. And at times the movie is a bit weird and bizarre, but you have to check it out for yourself to believe it. And now we come to 1972's Godzilla vs. Gigan, which this features another of Toho's well-designed. As you can see, Gigan is a hybrid, a machine and a living creature all into one. Gigan has these look hooks as hands, and he has this deadly looking buzz saw that he can use. He uses it on poor Anguirus, and it actually cuts and then cuts Anguirus, and Anguirus bleeds and stuff like that. It was pretty full on stuff. And this is one of the first films to show Godzilla actually bleed, because up until then Godzilla did not bleed in any of the previous Godzilla films, any of the Godzilla films of the 1960s, and not even 1971's Godzilla vs. Hedorah, because A.G. Tsuburaya, who was the director, didn't want to show blood to kids, as he thought it would be too frightening. But sadly, since A.G. Tsuburaya passed away in 1970, we have Godzilla versus Gigan, showed Godzilla actually being spurt out blood. So, as a kid, I wasn't frightened by it. I was actually a bit shocked, but surprised. And again, because of the diminishing budgets at that time, Godzilla vs. Gigan also utilizes stock footage, although they did have a bit of miniature work, but mostly they would use stock footage to cut down on the costs, because the movie industry at that time was going through a bit of a rough era. You know, the Godzilla films, while popular with children, but the majority of Japan just weren't interested in Godzilla movies as much. The Godzilla movies were doing well with children, but like I said, the box office attendance were declining. So yeah, well, Godzilla vs. Gigan, I do like the monster Gigan, but the movie itself, although entertaining, I can't really. It's a bit of a mixed bag. You know, it's good, but most times it's a bit clunky and uneven and stuff like that. So it's entertaining, but a bit clunky at times. And just have another drink. And here we have 1973's Godzilla vs. Megalon. Again, regarded as one of the worst Godzilla movies because this movie utilizes a heavy amount of stock footage. I think this movie took around, 6 to 8 weeks to complete. So maybe there's a reason, there's no wonder there's a heavy amount of stock footage. And also, Godzilla vs. Megalon at that time, for 2 years, held the record as the lowest attended Godzilla film in Japan. But for me, I actually thought this was entertaining, as a fun, cheesy, and ridiculous monster movie loaded with entertaining monster battles and things like that, Yeah, it does use stock footage. For me, I got a good kick out of it, I enjoyed Godzilla vs. Megalon, despite, not being, appreciated as much. But for me, I think Godzilla vs. Megalon is underrated and underappreciated. So it's very entertaining. So if you're bored and you're, want some bit of action to lighten up your day or something, check out Godzilla vs. Megalon. And now we get to the end of the 1970s, where we encounter another of Godzilla's arch nemesis here. 1974's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. Again, another movie that's regarded as the best of the series. I mean, this movie is awesome. We have alien invaders, and we have Godzilla fighting a robotic version of himself. We have secret agents stepping in to deal with the situation, to fight the aliens and stuff. Yeah, and I've always thought Mechagodzilla was cool, a cyborg version of Godzilla. I mean, damn, that's pretty cool. Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. Yeah. So, again, definitely another classic Godzilla movie from the 1970s, and one of the best of the Godzilla films of the 1970s. I highly recommend it. Very colorful, very, wacky and such an adventurous film. So yeah, definitely give Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla a check out, because it's awesome as hell. Okie dokes. Just sort this out. And next is the final Godzilla film of 1970s, 1975's Terror of Mechagodzilla, or as it known in Japan, Mechagodzilla's Counterattack, where once again the aliens rebuilt Mechagodzilla to once again destroy Tokyo and to eliminate Godzilla. And in this film, another monster joins the brawl. In the previous film, Godzilla has help. He gets help from a monster of an Okinawan legend called King Caesar. Here in Terror of Mechagodzilla, Mechagodzilla gets help from Titanosaurus, an amphibious dinosaur who's being mind controlled by a disgraced scientist. And again, another awesome 1970s Godzilla film that's loaded with monster battles and amazing explosions, especially when Mechagodzilla and Titanosaurus tear down Tokyo with all their array of weapons and stuff. So yeah, a great and a very explosive conclusion to the Showa era Godzilla films that ran from 1954 to 1975. Alright, I think that was the Showa era. So now we're going to go on to the Heisei era, which ran from 1984 to 1995, and then we go to the Millennium series, which is 1999's Godzilla Millennium, but the American title was Godzilla 2000, and which ran from 1999 and ended in 2004, which was Godzilla's 50th anniversary film, Godzilla Final Wars. And then after that we will talk about the American films from 1998's Godzilla, and of course the recently legendary Pictures Monsterverse, the films that have Godzilla in it, I mean. But anyway, that's for another day. So that was my first half of the Godzilla films, and stick around because the next Godzilla films are coming. So, see you all soon.